Hello friends, it's your brother Hampton. Where I am, the weather is doing better, and with that, I am getting a little bit happier. So I want to share 10 things that have made me a happier person that I've learned over the years, and I want to share them so it can hopefully make you or someone you know happier as well. It isn't directly related to fitness, but I feel like a lot of us into fitness and on this channel are trying to improve some part of ourselves and get better and better incrementally, little by little, which is a wonderful journey. And also, I have never really felt that my fitness existed in a vacuum. So when I'm happier and feel more productive, I usually want to exercise more and vice versa. So that's actually number one. Even when I'm tired and even when I don't feel like I have enough time, if I spend a little bit of time, even a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, working up to more, exercising, I usually end up having more energy, my mood is boosted, and I end up doing more overall, and I enjoy doing more overall. And this is backed up by some studies. So that's number one, find the time to exercise if and when possible. Most of us on this channel already know this, so I won't spend too long on it. And this is actually number one, and number five is probably the most fundamental, but it might make more sense after I go through a few first. And number two is actually a follow-up to that, and there's a couple of parts to it, because a lot of us know that we should do things like work out. Like, man, I should save money, I should work out, I should spend more time with family, but we don't always feel like we have the time. And even if we technically have the time, because you've seen breakdowns, like, oh yeah, you have 30 minutes, you have an hour to do it, we don't always feel like doing it. We might be exhausted by life. And if that's you, don't worry, because you're definitely not alone. What I wish someone would have told me early on is that something that would help my time management isn't just writing down a schedule, but knowing that I can actually develop the ability to focus on these things. So when I didn't feel like working on this, what I found is like, well, over the past few years or so, I have to do something, so I'll try, and I don't really feel like it. And 10 minutes in, 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in, I become lost in the work in a good way. I am actually immersed in it. So now what I've learned is that I can build my ability to focus on these tasks. And that improves both my time management and my productivity, because I can devote more time and focus on things and know that I can spend an hour on this and actually get something done. But there's an important addendum to that, because I feel like a lot of us, when we're trying to improve something about our lives, at least for me, for several years, it was like, well, I don't want to work too hard because then I'm wasting my life on that, when I actually could be doing what I actually want, and I could relax a little bit more so I could actually enjoy my life. But then I spent some time enjoying my life and I think, well, no, I'm not actually doing anything, so I need to spend more time doing stuff. What I found is that it was important for me to learn to distinguish between work and work. Work being what we do for money, and then also work, the things that drive us forward, the things that we want to do in life. And if you're very lucky, then those can be somewhat combined or entirely combined. But if we learn to differentiate between working what we do for money and working what we want to do when we don't really have to do anything, you can learn to direct a little bit more effort and time into the second one, and you can really enjoy that. I believe the Hungarian-American psychologist that popularized flow state, I'm going to try to pronounce his name as Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I know that might be wrong, sorry, talked about how in his research, people assumed they would enjoy life more when they're in the hammock, when they're relaxing, but they actually really enjoyed life when they were in the moment of something they enjoyed, when they were immersed in that productivity. So like many people, like many of you, I've heard that we don't have to tie productivity to our self-worth, which I agree. There are many times where you won't do that much stuff. There are times where I planned to do a lot of stuff and I didn't get it done and I felt kind of bummed. We don't want to spend too much time on that. Yes, I completely agree. We are a lot more than just our labors. There's a lot more to our value as people. But I can recognize that and also recognize that I enjoy being immersed in producing in things that I love. And my ability to do that didn't start off amazing, but improved over time, like many things in life. And so that point that I just made, I did my best to try to explain my side of. I try to say, well, this is why I like it. It may not be for everyone, but there's still a chance that it might be considered somewhat controversial to some people, right? Some people might still kind of misunderstand a little bit and say, well, no, I work really hard. I don't want to say that I'm only worth what I work and we should detach from that. I think I actually had the opposite problem. I actually want to work less and enjoy doing nothing. I enjoy doing nothing. I don't know about you, Hampton, and I get that. That's a very valid viewpoint, and I want to use that to illustrate my third point here, which is that I try to give my side, try to be understanding, and that I don't spend that much time always trying to convince. I realized a little while ago that while it seems like a lot of people disagree on a lot of different things, especially on the internet, when I meet them in person and we talk and there's an ability to have a dialogue rather than long paragraphs on either side, then a lot of people were actually quite understanding. So if we disagreed on that, I say, no, I get it. I understand what you're saying. This is my viewpoint, but I also also get yours, a lot of people can also be very understanding in return. So I recognize that yes, a little communication can go a long way, especially up front, which is what I'm doing right now. But it's not always avoidable that there's some kind of miscommunication. And I recognize that I had a slight fear of being misunderstood. It's okay to have points, but I had a slight fear of people misunderstanding and misrepresenting my point. And the second part to that is it really helped alleviate my stress and help me be a happier, more fulfilled person when I recognize that I'll do my best to explain my side, and then I don't always spend effort trying to convince others about it when I don't need to. And just to go a little bit meta and illustrate that point with this point, someone could say, well, what do you mean? There's very important things we need to discuss. I completely agree. There's a lot of very important points in society that we should have very valuable, detailed, informed discussions on, but not everything is that. To use a personal example that a lot of content creators might relate to, a lot of people don't necessarily know what I do for a living. Some people still think, oh, he does stuff on TikTok, right? So I think that they think that my job is doing the TikTok dances that were popular back in 2020 and I know are still popular now, but it's really not. I've danced a couple times on this channel, and yes, it was a beautiful dance, but it's not my primary living. It's not what I primarily do. And even people who know what I do might disagree, and they say, hey, Hampton, I don't think you should be reducing everyone's attention spans using short form content. But I think while short form content has its pitfalls, it's also a way that we can try to reach people and try to give them good things that might improve their lives. And when it seems like someone really disagrees, they might be right. I don't always have to try to convince. And instead, I spend the time I would have spent on that on building things that I want to build and my other hobbies. And I've learned to identify and work on these. Some people that follow the content pretty closely have noticed that I've spent more time in the past year on my podcast channel, which is Coffee with Hampton. This is tea, by the way, where I talk about life, philosophy, and other things. And I've also spent some time on my business channel for content creation, entrepreneurship, and social media, which is Hybrid Creators. You can follow those if you're into those things. But it took me a while to know where I wanted to put these things, because when I sit down to make a video, my thought is usually, if I'm going to spend several hours trying to make this video, what video can I make to help people the most? And that answer was only sometimes about fitness. I know some people only want fitness, I get it, but I want to put my stuff about life and content creation and media and things that are always running through my brain somewhere. I don't know if they've amounted to that much yet. They're still relatively new and not everyone is into that, but working on that has made me a happier person, and I hope it's helped other people. I don't know if it's good for business, but it does make me happier. And as mentioned, the number 5 point is spending some time on self-reflection and introspection so that I would know that I wanted to do these things, that I'd know that these things made me a happier person. First, I had to try them, which is why I call it experiential introspection. A lot of people that have spent time trying to reflect on themselves, meditating, things like that, they might have heard about the benefits of introspection, but you know that it can lead to overthinking sometimes, right? Sometimes your first instinct is right, but when you really try to dig, then you might overthink it. And what I found is that while spending time on self-reflection and trying to understand yourself is really important, there's sometimes just simply not enough information to make a decision like you want. And to fix that, what I've learned is that sometimes we just have to try and make the best decision we can with the information that we have, even if that decision is to wait. When I wasn't sure about some things and I wasn't sure what to do, I sometimes just tried it if I thought that I could safely do it. And this led to some great things. I learned about these things, that I enjoy these things, but it also definitely led to some mistakes that I've made quite recently that I'm still feeling the impact of. But while I do hurt from those mistakes, and some part of me does wish that I didn't make them, I do recognize that I have the benefit of now knowing where that path leads, and I can very easily say no to something. So people that have trouble saying no to things, after you've been burned a few times, it becomes a little bit easier. If you spend any time reading quotes or stories from successful people in your niche or whatever you're interested in, you'll know that it's not always easy to apply the advice they have. And the reason they can feel so strongly about that is because they've been there before. It's one thing to say, I don't want to do that because I read a book about someone that said doing that was wrong. It's another thing to say, I've done that before, I am not doing that. No. And then when people say, oh, here are all the reasons, you're like, here are all the details behind those reasons that actually make it not as good as how you're making it sound. So experiential introspection, trying things and then reflecting and trying to learn from those things helps you, in a good case, to find something new that you like and know why you like it. And in another case, maybe perhaps make a mistake and know what you want to avoid and why you want to avoid it in the future. And I talk about this and more in a book that I'm writing, tentatively titled Mentally Fit, which might release later this year, and I'll let you know more as I finish it up. I hope people like it and it can help people. And if you do that for a while, you might find that you become the person that's now telling other people and advising other people based on your experience, like, hey, I don't want to do that and you shouldn't do that because here's why, here's my experience with it. And they may sometimes listen, they may other times may not, and that kind of continues the cycle on their end. But a benefit of learning to be introspective and learning about yourself that I found is that I also learned to communicate my thoughts a little better. When I understand how I feel and I can articulate how I feel to myself, that improve my ability to articulate those thoughts and phrase different things to other people. I firmly believe this is a super valuable skill that I think a lot of people can and should learn, and I've been trying to work on for a while. Like many things, it does take some time. But in almost all cases, I generally want to be able to communicate myself accurately to someone, but also with the undertones that I want. And this was me trying to find a way to say something that was kind, but still true to myself, but also, to the best of my ability, fair to the other person. Just to use a random example that a lot of us may find in our lives is some people are good friends or good roommates, but not other things, right? So you might find, hey, I enjoy being friends with this person, but I don't enjoy working with them or living with them for a variety of reasons. So it's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, perhaps, to tell someone that you don't want to go further. You just want to keep what you currently have, but sometimes it's awkward to be able to say that to someone. But I found that it's better to take that risk of awkwardness and still try to be honest but kind, and that can save a lot more awkwardness and more pain and more perhaps unnecessary hurt in the future. If you say, hey, I like you and I want us to keep being friends, but I don't know if our working styles are compatible, or honestly, I need a roommate that's a little bit more compatible with the way that I want to live. And you try to be kind and nice, and yes, sometimes they take it really well, other times they may not take it quite as well, but usually doing it now and trying to communicate openly and honestly usually makes it better long term. So I try to communicate whenever possible and learn to communicate better. Yeah, this is interesting lighting, isn't it? Right, I can see it in my monitor. Looks like I'm glowing, which is not always good. And part of the foundation that makes that possible is just me being honest with myself. So honesty. And I saved this one for a little bit later in the video. So if you're watching this, you may take it a little bit more seriously, perhaps, because I feel like honesty is talked about a lot and it might be a little bit misunderstood. So look, I understand the idea of fake it till you make it. I feel like some people, they feel like they want to push themselves a little bit out of their comfort zone so they can grow as people. Or you want to say, well, I'm not that yet, but I'm going to pretend to be so I can grow into that. But I feel that life is stressful enough that I don't want to pretend to be something that I'm not, or I don't really need to. Whenever I find something to be very stressful in my life, when I feel like, man, this thing is really stressing me out, I ask myself if I'm being realistic and I'm being honest, either to myself or to someone else. Because if I'm not able reasonably to do this thing in 3 days, like I said I could, like I said I would, I might just need to own up to it and say, hey, I overestimated my own abilities here. I can still try, I'll work hard on it. I still want to improve myself, but I want to be honest and say, this might be pushing the limit of my abilities, and I'm not quite sure if I can do it. So I want to be honest to myself, and I also want to be honest to someone else. And this is especially so when there's already a little bit of conflict, and I'm sure people recognize that this can apply to a lot of different things, not just your own abilities. But let's say I'm having an argument with someone, and someone said that I'm being a little bit too prideful, or I'm being a little bit too conceited about this. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just being realistic. So I can think about that later on and say, maybe I was being a little bit prideful. And this is part of self-reflection. And you usually know it's accurate if you identify it and you feel this release from yourself. Like, man, I feel so much better just saying it, that I actually was in the wrong there. And now I can try to make amends. So if you're watching this and you feel some stress about some things and you're contending with someone else over something, you might want to think, are they right? Just consider the idea, right? And you might find that they're not. You might find that, no, I'm not being prideful. They're actually being overly critical, right? And I can't really tell you whether that's right or wrong, but honesty can apply and benefit us in many different ways. But if you're feeling stress or anxiety or just not sure about something, you may want to ask yourself if you are being honest and realistic with your own ability, intentions, and your goals. And next, now that we're back to unusual lighting land, we can talk about something that you might need after you identify that, which is forgiveness. And I know that's another thing that's perhaps a little bit misunderstood and a little bit controversial, but something really important about forgiveness that I learned early on is that it's not just for others. It is sometimes also for yourself. And there's different ways you can phrase that, but I will say that there were many times where forgiveness benefited me. Because when you identify something, and I used relatively harmless examples just now. If you say you can paint a painting, but you actually can't, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't paint that painting. That's relatively harmless. There are some conflicts that people might find hard to forgive. They cause serious issues in your life or the lives of others, and sometimes the lives of people that you care about. And that might create a rift in your relationship that might last forever. So when I talk about forgiveness, it's not because someone necessarily always deserves, in your own words, to be let back in your life. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should let someone back in your life. And when it comes to yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did nothing wrong. For me, it is a lever we can pull, a means, a release to reduce the amount of future unnecessary harm that we cause either to ourselves or to others. This is a topic that is very close to me, and I know other people might feel very strongly about it too, but I have some family members, and you might feel this way as well, people who have very severely wronged them, that they don't want to let back in their lives, that they still feel a lot of anger towards. And at least for me, my close friends and family, I have seen something that happened decades ago still eat them up, even though that person is gone. Some of those people have passed away now, and they're still buried in regret, maybe a little bit of unnecessary sorrow. And I really wish, as someone who loves them, that they could let it go a little bit. It doesn't justify what that person did. They might have really wronged them, and they should never have done that. But usually the thing already happened, and for my friends and loved ones, I do wish sometimes they could let it go and move on a little bit, at least for themselves. And I know sometimes the person you think wronged everyone is yourself. So this also applies to yourself too. Sometimes you might recognize that it happened. You might feel tremendous guilt over that. But to some degree, you may also want to start to forgive yourself so you can move on. It doesn't necessarily justify what you did. It doesn't necessarily justify what they did, depending on who needs to be forgiven. All I'm saying is that if you choose, this can be a tool you use, a release lever to release a little bit of pressure and have a little bit more happiness and contentment in your life. Now, how you do that could be a whole video in itself. But for me, it really helped to try to feel a little bit of empathy towards the other person. When I understand the people that wronged me, the reasons why they might want to do that. Like, this person stole money. They really scammed me and they shouldn't have done that. But I understand that they're trying to run a business and they have family and they have young children they're trying to feed. Good example, I think, because it doesn't necessarily make it right. They still did something wrong, but I understand their intentions a little bit more. And I'm like, I understand why they would want to do that, even though it was wrong. And for me, that starts the process of forgiveness a little bit, to where I don't feel as much anger, but then I can still choose whether or not I want to continue to associate with this person. And same thing for myself. When I feel like I have really deeply wronged someone else, if I understand that this is part of a learning process, and because I learned this and I never want to do this again to anybody else, I can try to offer myself a little bit of grace and maybe start the path to forgiveness. Once again, I can't necessarily say whether or not it's deserved, and whoever you're thinking of, if you don't want to forgive them, I understand. Not trying to force you at all. You probably know your life pretty much better than anyone else. This is just one tool that helped me. And this next one is a fast one, which is somewhat ironic, because a lot of the things I've talked about in this video obviously didn't happen right away. And a lot of things I actually disagreed with and I would have argued with my past self about. Or maybe if I listened to myself, I shouldn't try to argue or convince. But a lot of it required some patience. And I know a lot of people watching this, especially the younger ones, you might think, well, patience, I don't have time to wait that long. Life might feel short. And I have ambition, I have goals, I want to pursue these things. And something valuable that I learned for myself that helped me with my goals while still helping me be a better person sometimes was that patience was not the opposite of ambition. It can help make ambition more sustainable. And it's what I call ambitious patience, potentially in my book. Because I'm sure that if you have goals and you're watching this and you want to either be happier, you want to be really good at something, you might realize that it takes some time. You're like, man, I want it now. I need to do it faster. Look at that person. They're going a lot faster than I am. So I learned to think of patience. And while that mindset can help us move quickly sometimes, to give us a little bit of drive, it also can really stress us out, as I'm sure most people are aware. So what I found for myself was to use a patience that didn't make me move slowly, but made me move at an optimal, sustainable pace, kind of like trying to find a good pace for a marathon. Because, as some people have found, if you really try to stretch yourself out, you're like, man, I need to go faster, I need to go faster, I need to go faster, there comes a point where you're not actually moving faster. And in fact, you might go slower overall if you burn out and you feel too much stress and you need to take a day or a week or a month as a break. So I try to move fast and work hard day to day, but there are times where I think, man, I need to move faster, I need this now, I need to go, 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 go. Then I'd learn to take a deep breath and go, and especially when things go wrong, when I make mistakes, like, man, I want to have this done now, I want to have it done a month ago. Deep breath. Life is short, but a lot of people underestimate what they can do in a few years after everything is aligned. The years around 2019 were some of the toughest in my life, at least mentally. And then I started hybrid a year later. And it's led to a lot of good things for myself and hopefully for other people. So work hard, but deep breath and keep working on the things that you want to build. And all the things in this video have helped me add more happiness to my life and enjoy life a little bit more and build something that I consider to be a realistic, usable optimism. So when I'm happier and realistically optimistic and have some hope, I tend to do more things that make me happier, more hopeful, and more optimistic. So happiness begets happiness for me. And happiness can mean a lot of different things to different people. Some people might think it means kind of a delirious form of temporary happiness that people might say, well, Hampton, you shouldn't try to pursue that. You shouldn't try to encourage others to pursue that. But when I say happiness here, I mean that sometimes, but I also mean fulfillment and contentment. And all the things in this video, including this last one, which is just trying to be a happier, more fulfilled, more content person so I can continue to find more things and build these things, have helped me try to improve myself and live a better life and try to be a better Hampton, both for myself and for all of you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video can help you or someone you know. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Oh, and for the past year, I've been working on a webtoon with a friend of mine. It's called Traveling Merchant Chronicles. Check it out if you like webtoons, manga, anime, and things like that. I'm writing a story to try to inspire some people to have some hope and optimism in the face of adversity that we might feel in life.